Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Craig Flint, and time for another edition of Weather Academy. And what we're going to talk about is we're actually going to go back to Christmas, last week into last weekend when we had the snow. So we're going to kind of recap what happened and kind of go over what the end result was, how everything came together, and we'll show you the forecast that we had put out and how we put out a forecast like that, because winter weather is not easy to forecast. There's always a lot of questions. So we'll break down exactly what we do and how we do it in this edition of the Weather Academy. So if you were watching me last week, we were using fancy terms like synoptic snow. And when we talk about synoptic in the atmosphere, that means it's a widespread ordeal. Synoptic snow means everyone gets snow, whereas the lake effect is more localized. Same deal with like rain in the summertime. If it's a synoptic rain, that means everyone from Erie to Meadville to Corey to Warren to French Creek, New York to Ashtabula, Ohio gets it, okay? So here's kind of a recap of what we were looking at going back to last week for Christmas. I know many of you wanted a white Christmas, and I hope you did have a good Christmas, by the way. So we look at the synoptic setup, and what we were watching last week is an area of low pressure that was forming down in the East Coast, or the southeastern United States. Now here's the thing. It's all about track with these systems. Sometimes these areas of low pressure can form on the East Coast, and then they curl their way up the East Coast and become pretty impactful nor'easters. There's actually a lat longe point out here that we call the benchmark, which is kind of like our indicator. If a storm tracks either over or just to the west of the benchmark, you could get some pretty good snow into northern New England. Sometimes they go south and east of the benchmark, which they go out to sea and really don't have an impact. And then other times they can go a little bit more inland, or they can go west of us. Now the storm track is important, and it's also important because of this winter, being that we're in a La Nina pattern. That means that the storm track and the way the jet stream is favoring, or the way the jet stream is set up, these storms usually like to hook west. Well, here's the thing. Anytime a storm goes west, we get the warmth out ahead of it, okay? So what gives? What happened on Christmas and over the weekend? So let's pretend, we're looking down on this low pressure, okay? So we're looking down on this. The winds go this way around that low, right? So it's a counterclockwise rotation around the low pressure. This side of the storm is always the warm side, because if you look down on the low and the winds go that way, it's sucking in all the warmth air, or the warm air, out on this side of the storm. This side of the storm is where you get the cold air. So again, looking down on that storm system, circulation like that drags in the colder air on the back side of it. Now there's another thing to talk to you about here, is right in here we have the Appalachian Mountains. Storms are lazy. It's not impossible, but most times they either track on either side of that mountain chain, okay? They rebirth out on the coast, become a nor'easter, wallop interior sections of New England, or they go up over the Great Lakes. You get the warmth up in, and then it's a mix to rain and then back to snow. All right, so what happened with the Christmas storm is, well, we had this synoptic setup here, this storm that was burgeoning and birthing in the southeastern United States. And the track was such that it was right just to the east of us. That, if you look at where the greatest pressure falls were on some of the reanalysis of the maps, that's where the storm went, just like that. Why is that important? Well, because we were like just on the western side of that storm. And when you have a storm track like that, you get what's called a deformation zone, or def zone snow. and that is an area of the atmosphere where there's tremendous lift. And in order to get clouds and any type of precipitation, you need to get that air up and moving. Well, you had the storm, okay? It tracked just to the east of us, and we got into some death zone snow, especially over Ohio, and it started to drag the colder air down. So let's take a look at this animation. So again, just to the east of us, and again, remember the circulation, that way, counterclockwise around low pressure in the atmosphere, which has to do with the Coriolis force, and that's a lesson for another day. But it basically, you had the storm going up over Lake Ontario, right? And then it just kind of hung out there, and what it did was it just grabbed all this colder air and started wrapping it in behind the system. There's the warm side of it right there, and then we were on the back side of it with the colder air coming in. That was the synoptic snow, the storm snow, the system snow, right? So we dragged the colder air in. Obviously, if you have precipitation falling in cold air, most of the time it's going to fall as snow. And that's exactly what we had. The colder air wrapping in behind it, which gave us the synoptic snow, the everybody gets it snow. For us here in Northwest PA, we talk a lot about lake effect. So to get something that's a widespread, everyone gets it snow, most of the time it's lake effect here, but not in this case. However, where did the storm go from there? Well, it just kind of lollygagged and hung out to the north of us. And eventually the air pressure went up and it weakened. But after the synoptic snow ended, we got into the lake effect business where the wind's picking up. Got to remember, when that wind flows over that open body of water that we know as Lake Erie or any of the Great Lakes, it picks up moisture, it runs into the land, and it's squeezed out in the form of snow. So I know that Tom showed you this map, but I just wanted to touch briefly on this again. So we had the synoptic snow. Now we switch gears and we talk about wind direction and lake effect snow. And it's all about the wind direction when it comes to lake effect. So we knew we were going to get the widespread snow from that system, but then where did the most persistent lake effect snow set up? That's what we were seeing happen through the day on Christmas into Saturday. So when you have a southwest wind, it favors Buffalo, okay? So that's where we really start to see the lake effect snow pile up if the winds are coming out of the south and west and heading towards western New York State and Buffalo. Remember, there's nothing slowing this wind down, so you could really squeeze out the moisture. So a southwest wind more favorable for Buffalo. Now what we had was more of a west-southwest wind. That wind direction, sweet for Erie County. And that's exactly what we had as the storm, which is now up there, kind of just hanging out, doing its own thing. It's wrapping in the colder air. The winds are coming across the lake. And based on the position of the storm, the wind direction was more of a west or southwest wind. So when you look at that, it favors Erie County. And we talk about lake effect. We talk about wind direction. It's all about angles and geometry. So you can see how this behaves, right? You got the west and southwest wind running into the Lake Erie shoreline, and that's when places like Conneaut and over towards Springfield and Fairview and Girard, up to the city of Erie, over towards Wesleyville, up towards Northeast, this type of wind flow here is when those areas really get belted, obviously. And then with the northwesterly wind, where it's coming in from across Canada, there's not as much of a fetch across Lake Erie. In other words, the time and the distance that the wind is crossing the lake isn't as long as if it were going west or southwest. It's only cutting across a shorter section of the lake. But you have the higher elevations down in here, south of Erie. So what happens is you get that upslope feature, where the wind is coming across the lake and then it runs into the higher elevations and it's forced up, right? So it's like a ramp. That adds extra lift, and that's when we squeeze out all the heavy snow in the primary snow belt of Erie, Crawford, and into Chautauqua County with a west and northwest wind. But that wasn't the wind direction on Christmas. We had more of that west and southwest wind, which is favorable for Erie County. So lake effect is challenging to forecast because it depends on where the heaviest band's set up. So I just wanted to recap. These are just a handful of totals that we got from the weather watchers. Remember, west-southwest wind favors Erie County. Well, check out some of these totals that we had. 18 inches in Edinburgh, 13 inches in Waterford, 14 inches at Niagara Pier, 18 inches in Northeast, 14.5 in Lake City, 24 inches in Cranesville. Even Meadville got into it, 15.5, 12 over towards Corey, and then the numbers tally off as you go farther away from the lake. I'm showing you this because, well, I mean, those are some pretty impressive totals, but I'm also showing you this because I wanted to show you this map. This was our final snowfall forecast that myself and Tom Atkins and Tom DeVecchio, we all put our brains together, and this is what we came up with. Now, why am I showing you this? I mean, I don't mean to sound braggadocious, but this worked out exactly the way we thought it would. Almost to a T. Now, there's always going to be surprises, but I guess this is just my way of, I don't know, I don't want to say patting ourselves on the back, but it's common for us meteorologists to get the, oh, you guys really blew this one, you were wrong on this one. We weren't wrong. So, I mean, this forecast worked out exactly the way we thought it would with some surprises. So this was the final map that we put out, right? This was Wednesday night and Thursday that we had these numbers. And we had this orange area of 12 to 18. We put a little qualifier there that there could be localized higher amounts. And then these little purplish splotches that you see here are where those localized higher amounts would be. So just take a look at that map, okay? 12 to 18, remember, west and southwest wind favors Erie County. So we had 12 to 18, broad area of it, isolated amounts over 20 inches. Now I want to go back. There they are, 18, 13, 16, 12, 14, 18. So, I mean, when we go back and do the reanalysis, forecast was right on track. We had 24 inches in Cranesville. There's that isolated amount higher than 20. Now, if there were to be one area where we were a little off, a little high on, Warren County. Now, I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of degree you have. If there's never going to be a perfect forecast, ever, okay? So look at the map again. This was our final map, 12 to 18 inches, localized higher amounts, and then if we back up, it's exactly what happened. We were a little bit too high over into Warren County. They only ended up with like 3.4, but we pretty much hit it right on the head for Erie County when you look at our snow map. All right, so what do we look at here as we wrap this up when it comes to winter weather forecasting? Well, this is kind of a breakdown. I have an incredible disdain for long-range forecasts because they're gonna change. That's just how it goes. But this is just kind of what we look at. So when you're talking 7 to 10 days out, what we're doing is we're just looking at pattern recognition. And we're asking ourselves, is the pattern favorable for winter weather? Is it not favorable for winter weather? Okay, so check one. And then we get to 5 to 7 days, we start looking at trends among the computer models. How are they analyzing things? Are they trending one certain way? Are they trending another certain way? So 5 to 7 days, it's all about the trend, all right? And then we get into the 3 to 5 day window. That's when we start to kind of hone in, right? And we try to figure out, okay, what are we dealing with here? Is it going to be snow, sleet, freezing rain, or both? Is it going to be just rain? So that's your 3 to 5 day timing. And then obviously 1 to 3 days, we really iron out those details in terms of how much snow, where, and when. So how much snow, where, and the timing. So really, when we're talking about a winter storm or lake effect or whatever the case may be, if you're talking to someone and they're putting numbers on a forecast that's 7 to 10 days away, they're ignorant to the science of meteorology. It just does not work that way. So you always have to be suspect of these social media posts that are predicting a storm 10 to 14 days out that are calling for these astronomical numbers. It doesn't work that way. It never will, you know, because things change. That's why I don't like long-range forecasting. So as you get closer to the storm, that's when you really hone in on those details. So all in all, we got a white Christmas. I know a lot of people were excited about that. And when we go back and do the reanalysis, we kind of grade ourselves too. I think we did okay. Let us know what you think. And of course, if you have any other questions about the storm or let us know how much you got, you could do that. You could just send us an email at weather@wjet.com. And as we look at the trends down the road, 7 days down the road, this pattern that we're going into, not really that favorable for winter weather, but it could change. That's why, you know, 7 to 10 days out, the degree of uncertainty gets a little excited. But we'll keep you posted no matter what Mother Nature throws at us this winter. I hope you enjoyed the snow, and I hope you had a good Christmas. It was a white Christmas. That's going to do it for this edition of Weather Academy. We will see you back next weekend. Until then, never stop learning. We'll talk to you later.